Hello, welcome to another episode of Talkin' Block. I am John Velociraptor Guerrero, and with me, as is sometimes the case, is Nicholas MajinTenshinhan Taylor, our tournament coverage expert on EventHubs. He got all of the results all weekend long for CEO, our first major international in-person event for Street Fighter 6. We're going to be talking about that in some good detail. Got some new data points for the emerging Street Fighter 6 competition status and everything. So, Nick, welcome onto the podcast. How are you doing? Do you have any energy after covering CEO all weekend long?
Thank you. Great to be back. No, my energy is completely shot. Some people may not be aware. I'm the only non-American on the team. I live in Sweden, so I'm working nights when I work these tournaments. And, CEO had a lot of stuff going on. So, yeah, pretty tired, but during the event, I was definitely kept awake because that action was something else. Super happy with seeing this first, really big outing of competitive Street Fighter 6, and it makes me so excited for the future.
Well, I am hyped for it because although the gap between playing online and playing offline has been, I don't even want to say shortened, it's like online is a legitimate entity as far as I'm concerned for competitive play right now, but it isn't offline. And this was a nearly 1,100 person Street Fighter tournament, almost got to 1,100 as I recall. And that means that we've got our first huge point of data when it comes to how are the pros, relatively speaking, doing with their characters. What have they explored? How many characters are being used at what levels, stuff like that. And not only did Nick cover the results, he also went and got the characters used, including secondaries for the top 192 placers in CEO, which means that now we can look at this and the rest of our weekend crew, this is MajinTenshinhan, Dark Horse, and Adaptive Trigger, they're always tackling these character popularity breakdown stories, which are really nice, and that's what we're going to look at today. So we'll have links in the description of the video below if you want to check out either the CEO results or these character popularity usage stats. We'll have links to those articles, but I want to look at them here because if we check out the top 192, which I think is about almost 20% or so of the total number of entrants, we can see which characters are the most popular. And again, this is an emerging game. We're trying to figure out, tier lists are all in flux and whatnot. This isn't some definitive statement like obviously now this character won, so he's she's the best character in the game, but we can see how things are shaking out. And as we look at it, one of the most interesting things in the top 192, who, Nick, was the most popular character?
I mean, it's your boy JP.
It's my boy JP. Yeah. 19 people played JP. 19 different people were using him once we got to the top 192, about the top 20% of the tournament. From there, Luke was in second with 18 people using him. Ken after that was 17. And then from there, we Kimberly was 16 with 2 alternates, DJ 14, Marissa and Manon both had 13. And then Jury, that's about as far as I want to go. And you guys can look at all these results, like I say in the description below. Marissa and Manon both had 13. So first and foremost, JP, a very polarizing character. The reason that people are saying that is because he is a different kind of character than everybody else. He is a zoning type, which tends to be especially frustrating, but we've seen people say that he's absolutely top tier. We've seen people say he's good, but he's gonna fall off as people figure him out. With 19 people playing him in the top 192, what's your takeaway there? How do you feel about JP?
I mean, it's interesting because you guys have been talking about character balance on the podcast or on the show, and I haven't really been around because I've been busy with tournaments, right? So I haven't really given my piece, and I largely agree with you when it comes to JP. I would like to add, as someone who's covered a lot of games and who's played a lot of games, there's always an early top tier who turns out to maybe not be so top tier, but they're usually still high tier because otherwise they wouldn't be seen as that good at the start, right? I think a pretty good example of that is Wesker in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, where
I played him too, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, everyone talked about him as if he was top 1. And by the time that Ultimate came out, Wesker saw a bunch of changes, a bunch of nerfs as well, where other characters who at that point were regarded as stronger maybe needed nerfs more than he did. And I think JP is in that spot. I think JP is probably going to get hit pretty hard because a lot of people consider him amazingly good. But if we assume that the game is going to be unpatched for a year, I think he's going to fall off quite heavily. And we already kind of saw that at CEO, no?
Well, nice segue setup, man. Yeah, if we jump down now to the next sort of bracket of coverage here with the popularity rates, the top 64 character usage, JP falls from being the most with 18. 13 of those players were eliminated between top 192 and top 64, and there are now only 5, and he ranks in the, he ties for 5th with E Honda for the most popular character. And at this point in the tournament, top 64, the most popular is Jury, with 8 maining her and 1 person using her as a secondary. This character has been also amongst the biggest discussed when it comes to very high tier, maybe top 5, maybe top 3, hey, maybe top 1. What do you think of Jury, and what is this information kind of saying about her?
Jury is an amazing character. I think anyone who looks at this game can clearly see she's a very strong character. The same way that you can see that JP is a strong character, but at least early on, Jury is a lot more enduring, and we can see that, as you were saying, in the top 192 you have 12 mains and 2 subs for Jury, and then into the top 64 she goes to 8 mains and 1 sub, which is like a very low drop considering you're eliminating over 100 players at that point, right?
Yes.
And then when you go into the top 24, there's still 6 Jury mains and
only
1
two
sub.
of them. Only 2 of them got knocked out between top 64 and top 24.
Yeah, so Jury, like, she's enduring in a way that nobody else is here. Like, she's not as common at the start when you look at the top 192, but I think she's common with top level players. And top level players, a reason they stay top level players is because they're pretty good at identifying what's a top level character.
Also, with that transition into the top 24, all of the JPs were eliminated. So we went from 18 in top 192 to 0 by the time we got to top 24. There were no more JPs. More than half the cast is still represented. You still got a Jamie, you still got a Chun-Li, you still got a couple Manons, which we'll talk about here in a second, and E Honda, and even a Lily secondary. But by this time, JP is completely gone. And then we jump into the top 8, right? The finals here, and there are still 3 mains for Jury and then 2 alternates for Jury. So she is still like very, very much there and present for just the top 8 at the very end of the event. To me, that's a big indicator that she is of the top tier kind of characters, and she is what, let me just put it this way, she is what the pros are very much gravitating to right now. Is that fair?
Yeah, 100%, especially in America, but I would say in other regions as well. I haven't been paying as much attention to Japan yet because we haven't had any really big events there yet. But we had Stomper not too long ago here in my home country of Sweden. I was even doing the commentary for it, you know. And we saw a lot of Jury there as well. In the end, Mr. Crimson won it with Dalsim, who is a pretty underrepresented character. But we are always going to have these character specialists, right? Like, it's not like Dalsim was common at that event either. It was just that Mr. Crimson's a really good Dalsim.
Right.
So yeah, I definitely think Jury has been showing as a very popular character in a lot of regions. And another thing I want to touch on regarding these results is the other character often brought up in tandem with Jury for this is Ken, but he actually fell off majorly at CEO.
Yes.
Not quite to the extent of JP, but like not far off either, because he started with 17 in top 192, which is close to JP's 19. And by the time of top 24, there's only 1 Ken left, and that was Phenom. So it wasn't even an American Ken left. It was one of the few Europeans who went there.
Yep, he went down to 6 in top 64, and then, like you say, just Phenom left in top 24, and Phenom didn't make the top 10. He went out in 9th place. So there were no Kens, and I'm sorry, the top 10, top 8. It's been a while since we've done tournaments, man. But so yeah, Ken, and I don't see that as we can now write Ken off as a not strong character. Like, this is one batch of data, and I think there's a lot of other players that would be top tier. Like if Chris T were there, for instance, I bet you he'd be around the top 8, top 16 level and such. And a lot of the Japanese players that are using Ken. So I'm not very quick to write Ken off yet, but it was interesting. You would imagine, I think he's the most popular, at least in some ways of looking at it. I don't know if it's overall or if it's amongst like master players and such, but he's a very popular character, even eclipsing his boy Ryu, who's almost always the main one for pretty obvious reasons. Ken is getting a ton of attention here, and again, I can't say that he's not a super solid character, that he doesn't have all the tools he needs to be one of, if not the best in the game, but the way things are shaking out, at least through CEO, he did not perform as well as I think we would have expected him to.
Definitely. I think the characters people were mainly looking at were Jury, JP, and Ken.
Mm-hmm.
And while there's been a lot of discussion, I know you've touched on it before, that JP is a character that people are going to figure out, and he's going to fall off a little bit, even if he's still strong. Nobody's really been saying that about Ken, and I don't even really think that about Ken. So with Ken, it feels more like an anomaly, and with JP, it feels more natural. But that's not to say that I still think JP is going to be around in top 8s a lot, and I think the same of Ken. Like you said, it's just one data point, but it's an interesting data point nonetheless.
Yes, and then you wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that there were not one, but 2 Menons in top 8. Now, if you were to ask my usual co-hosts, Steven and John, Catalyst and Dream King, you'd probably hear that Menon should have been right through the top 8. They're pretty afraid of her as a very strong top tier, as we talked about. But I think she's good. I don't think she's top tier. What do you think about Menon?
Yeah, I'm in line with you. I think she's good, but she isn't that impressive to me. Like, I think she's more degenerate than legitimately strong, if you know what I mean.
Sure, she's a grappler.
Yeah, but she's also very interesting from a data point perspective, because if you look at the top 64, there are only 3 Menons left. 2 of those made it all the way to top 8.
One of them we should definitely point out is Idom, and we all know that Idom can take a character, as we saw with Laura, that nobody else is making work, and make her work. And he's doing that here with Menon, as far as we can see. But also Sticky Fingers, who placed one spot higher. Do you know Sticky Fingers? Is this a new name, relatively speaking?
I did not know Sticky Fingers, no. I believe I've seen him, like,
that's an awesome name, especially for a command grab character. Gonna grab you up, Sticky Fingers.
I'm pretty sure it's a JoJo reference, because there's a popular stand in JoJo called Sticky Fingers. But yes, it is a very fitting name for a Menon player. And Sticky Fingers actually did eliminate Idom in the head-to-head, where Idom kind of curiously picked Jury because he was trying to avoid the mirror. Eventually switched back to Menon. And,
I'm not gonna play against Menon. That character is degenerate. Let me go over to a good character like Jury.
Exactly. But then switching back to Menon, it went a bit better, but Sticky Fingers still came out on top. 4th place at CEO. Come on, that's insane.
Yeah.
Like, we had a lot of players I didn't really know about, because 2 of these jury mains that got into top 8, Seek and Goat Gloat, were not players I was familiar with either. And looking at the matches, we're seeing a lot of new blood. Me, at least, new blood, right? Come in and really, like, shake things up. But how should I put it? In a very different way than I felt it was happening in Street Fighter V, for example, because I really feel like we're seeing people outplaying others here, which wasn't always the case in 5, maybe.
You don't have to say that with any kind of apology. That absolutely was often not the case in Street Fighter V. So, and to be fair, I'm not going to pull any punches here. There are certainly situations in Street Fighter 6 where you get, like, especially with the degenerate characters like maybe Honda and such, where there are answers, but the craziness is on the defender to defend. And especially here in the first weeks of the game, you're not prepared, you're not ready. Maybe your brain is ready, but your fingers aren't ready for, like, punishing a butt slam or perfect parrying a headbutt. And as we're going to get into in a second here, this was very prominent in a lot of the late games for a certain somebody that won the entire thing. But there's a lot of crazy stuff that goes on where in Street Fighter 6, where I don't want to say it's a one-player game by any means, because it's not, because you always have an answer, and that's the key difference maker. But it's certainly it's like you feel the pressure that you have to be ready for the BS that's coming your way, and it's going to come your way because there's a lot of mechanics and a lot of resources for these characters to use. And I actually think that's actually a really good transition, because I think that's a lot of what decided this entire tournament at the final matches was MenaRD pulling out Blanka, and people, I think, widely just not being ready for it. But I want to talk about that a little bit. So what are your first thoughts when you see MenaRD pull out Blanka? Do you expect him to do well? Do you expect him to be unga bunga? Do you, like, super honed in on the specific strategy? What were you thinking when that popped up?
I mean, here's the thing. I saw previous events where he did use Blanka against Punk. I think a lot of us saw that when Punk was using Cammy. And so it was already kind of foreshadowed, right? But everyone knows that Luke is his main. He's mostly playing Luke. But then he has these matches, funnily enough, usually against some of the absolute best players, where he brings out this counter pick, which is like, is it even a counter pick? Like, this early in the game, it's hard to tell, but, like, what is Blanka doing that is so good against characters like Cammy and Jury, who most people consider really strong?
Well, and when I'm looking at it, my first gut reaction without breaking it down and looking at the frame data, and by the way, there's a JM Cross video where he breaks down, I think it's Grand Finals, and looks at what MenaRD's Blanka is doing, and very worthwhile if you're interested in this kind of stuff. It was a cool video and a breakdown. But I see it and I go, I'm watching like the likes of Nephew and Punk just like not ready for all the things that Blanka could potentially do. And what you're seeing is he'll do these goofy balls that you know can be countered, and even sometimes do get countered, but not enough for it to matter. And he's jumping at places where you're like, oh, they'll anti-air. Oh, they weren't ready for the anti-air. And it felt almost like there is so much unknown potential from Blanka. And in this game, the mental stack is just very, very prominent and something that you really have to contend with. And if you don't know everything that the other character can do, and they're jumping around at weird angles and going backwards and forwards and weird, this and that's, and throwing Blanka Chan dolls at you. If you don't know all that stuff, you're just sitting there like a deer in the headlights, and that's all someone like MenaRD needs to sniff you out, make you incredibly predictable, and take advantage of it. And I think that's what we saw here.
Yeah, like, I don't think, like, I could be wrong, okay? I'm not a Blanka expert, all right? So don't clip this and throw it in my face 6 months from now, you know what I mean? But I don't think this is going to be a long-term counter pick from MenaRD. I think he's just, as you're saying, I think he's kind of using the fact that the game is new, because we were talking about, you need to be very on point with your defense, but it's so new. How can you be ready with everything, right? And that kind of thing is extremely potent, because another thing you brought up was, so you can counter the Blanka balls, but is that even enough? And that's kind of what we saw from Nephew. He was on point.
He DP'd like 6 of them in a row, and by 6 I mean like maybe 3, but still that feels like 6. And it didn't matter. It was like, okay, a little bit of damage here and there. It didn't deter Mena from obviously continuing to do it. And every time you block one of those things, that's like almost a bar of drive meter. And if you get hit with it, that's that's a bar of drive meter out of your mental stack. And like, he's just all over the place. And you didn't see him doing a lot of parries. You didn't see him doing a lot of anti-airs. It just felt like they were overwhelmed with too many potential options, so they did none.
Yeah, and I mean, to MenaRD's credit, I mean, of course, to his credit, he's an amazing player. He's 2-time Capcom Cup champ, and he was clearly the best player at CEO. There's no doubt about that. But what I want to say about this Blanka pick is that it's really interesting that he brings it out in the way that he does, because it feels like he's really just taking hard advantage of the fact that this is a rarely played character. And right now, people haven't had enough time to do counter strategies against most characters. They've been focusing on Ken, they've been focusing on JP, and we saw that in the stats, right? They've been focusing on Jury, which we didn't see that much results of in the stats, but still. Nobody's been labbing these characters that nobody's playing. Like, characters like Dalsim and Blanka are probably going to be causing upsets for a while, because they aren't the main focus. You don't have time for that right now. You know what I mean?
I remember saying to a friend, and I think it was week 1, I'm terrified of the idea. We were talking about like characters that we've played against. I was like, I'm terrified of playing in a tournament and running into a Blanka, because I'm not going to know what to do. And I mean, that's on me, and this was a few weeks ago. I've looked at a little bit of Blanka stuff and got some experience. But yeah, like I feel the same way.
Yeah, and that's just how it is. So with that in mind, I think that people are going to be looking more into Blanka. You already saw it from Punk a bit, right? Because he switched off his main Cammy to play Jury in the matchup instead. And based on the matches, I don't think Jury is bad against Blanka by any means. It's just they don't have the matchup experience against Blanka that MenaRD has against Jury with the character. Sure.
And 2 things there on MenaRD. 1, he's a world-class player. I think you can't even argue at this point, with 2 Capcom Cup titles in the Street Fighter V game, that he's the best in the world at Street Fighter V. He proved that. And then here, and he's been making a total presence, and he's been establishing himself just with the same momentum here in Street Fighter VI. Some of it is obviously people didn't know the matchup. Some of it is MenaRD being amazing with his reads And I would say I saw shades of his birdie with this Blanka pick, because it wasn't that he was doing things that didn't have counters. It was that he was mixing things up so well. And that's, I think, his strongest aspect as a player, is that he can get into your mind and do the things that, sure, they're unsafe. Sure, it's a DP in your face while on offense. It's a command grab from forever away that you just, for whatever reason, he knew you weren't going to be ready for. I think Blanka, both because people don't know, but also just because of the way the character is designed, even in the, I'll do a Blanka ball and it'll either be the short one that'll just put me up in your face, or it'll be the long one that you're actually going to have to block, and you have to deal with those differently. Are you going to be ready for that? MenaRD is ready to pounce and take absolute advantage, and I think this also factors in, or is a display of how smart of a player he is, that he's taking the current situation and he's playing to his strengths in a way that gets him the results in CEO right off the bat. He's going into Evo real hot right now.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, Luke, a character we've barely even touched on, I also think is a really strong character, and that's his main weapon, right?
And much more traditional Street Fighter, Shoto type, solid, plays the fundamentals, and has just like straight good marks across the board. Isn't really wonky, isn't going to hit you with a ton of gimmicks like Blanka. And now, man, when you've got those as your two options, no one's going to be ready.
No, exactly. And I think that might be something to segue into our other discussion of who's actually strong right now in Street Fighter 6. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
So obviously we've had some time for the game here, almost a month at this point, and we've all been grinding. I've been consuming footage more because I was due to do commentary at Stomper.
Okay.
So I was focusing on that. I've also been playing though, and you get a feel for characters, right? Early on, I had two characters in my top 3, and they're still there.
Oh yeah?
They're Ken and Jury.
Yeah, and I would agree with those two. I don't think that the lack of performance by Ken and the fact that Jury couldn't take it against Blanka in the end here on Punk or Nephew's behalf, that doesn't shake them from being a couple of the best in the game. Yeah,
I don't know. They stuck out so early for me. I mean, for most people, it's not like I was, alone in thinking this. It's a very common opinion. But I've never wavered on that. Like, I'm 100% confident that these two characters are in the top 3. And then early on, when everyone's hyping JP up that much, I never actually put him in my top 3. I was like, I don't know if this guy's even top 5, even though I think he's very good. Like, I think he's a high tier character. But if we're looking at top 3, that's top tier. And top 5 would be like the upper end of high tier, right?
Yeah, I would think he's kind of like he'll settle in high mid tier, and I think that's a good place for a grappling type, and I think that's a good place for a zoning type. I don't think you want those type of characters to be amongst the best in your game, because while that means it's fun for the players that use those characters, it's really not fun for everybody else. And we've talked about the polarization of having high tier grapplers and how that's hard to do. They've taken a different approach to it in this game, and I think that that's interesting, and we'll continue to explore it. Maybe the grapplers are closer to everybody else with the way things are balanced around here, and maybe the same is true for JP, but I don't think that he's a top 5 character at this point. I know that's gonna make a lot of people kind of writhe and wriggle in their seats, but they'd have to prove it to me. And again, look at the results for CEO. He's popular, he's apparently easy to use, at least in doing his basic stuff that will frustrate everybody, but he's also nowhere to be seen once we get to top 24. So
I agree somewhat with you, but not entirely, because I think he's definitely not top 3, but I could see him being top 5.
Yeah, and well, he might be, but I think that Capcom doesn't really want that. I don't think the community really wants that, and think so. Even if he is, like you said earlier in a previous video, we will probably see him get nerfed to make sure that he sits around at like high mid at best, because I don't think you really want a character that's frustrating everybody when they're winning to be as prominent and to have those tools. I think you really got to earn your wins with JP, and that's going to be becoming more and more the case as people figure him out. So, so top 5 maybe is what you say for him?
I have a bunch of characters that are potential top 5s, and I haven't been able to quite decide. The only thing I have locked in is Jury and Ken are definitely top 3 in my opinion, and then I have a bundle of maybe 5-6 characters. to fill out that top 5, but I haven't solidified it. So
well, let's start with Luke, because Luke has been one that I think Japan puts way up there. The one that MenaRD used primarily to get into top 8 and to win the tournament. And we saw plenty of Lukes, not only at the very beginning at the 192 mark, where the 192 players still left in. There were 18 Lukes. By the end of it, there were 3 Lukes in the top 24, and then I think we just had MenaRD in the top 8. But he was still a fairly prominent character, and that's what you expect. He's the new Ryu, the new protagonist. They want him to be prominent, especially in the vanilla version of the game. So he's got a lot going for him, but you're not sure he's a top 5er.
I'm sure Luke is top 5. In Luke's case, I'm more wavering if he's top 3 or top 5.
Oh, okay, right. We were talking about top 3.
He's the character that's closest to top 3 for me. But I can't like solidify him in my mind as top 3 the same way I can Ken and Jury. And so I would have him in top 5. I just can't really solidify him as top 3 or top 5. And then I have a bunch of characters that are like potentially top 5.
Who is it that's making it so you can't solidify Luke in the top 3?
Guile and Cammy.
Yeah, Cammy is interesting. We did see Punk use Cammy. We also saw the likes of Justin Wong use Cammy, and he went out in 13th place. Punk, of course, got all the way up to 3rd place. And you always expect this character to be one of the best, because at least since Street Fighter 4, she has been an absolute terror for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think that they took that into account, they being Capcom, took that into account and went out of their way to make sure that a lot of the things that made her unbalanced or gave her unfair advantages were tweaked in a way, whether that be like timing on a dive kick or hurt boxes or whatever, damage output. I've heard back and forth that she has below average damage output, and then it's just that people don't know how to hit with her correctly, and she's got plenty of damage. But she's definitely still the same character in terms of her zipping around the stage and having speed and hitting you when you're not ready, but having solid offense and not being too worried about projectiles because of her maneuvers. So I do think that she's got a lot of tools. I just haven't seen the results with her, and I'm hesitant to put her above like high mid.
I mean, we haven't seen results with anyone yet, really. Like, not much.
But Guile, for instance, like almost, I agree that he's got the makings for an absolute beast of a character, a top 5er for sure. But we're not seeing a lot of people use him. And like NuckleDu, sure, and Kaba, sure, and they're great. But like NuckleDu got 17th at this event too, for what that's worth. And Kaba jumped in at 5th.
NuckleDu went down to losers and pools though. Like, he had a very hard path. I'm trying to remember. I think I have it written down here actually, who he lost to in pools. Yes, he actually lost to a Swedish guy, Juicy Joe, from my home country of Sweden, playing JP. Took NuckleDu down,
and I hear that the JP Guile matchup is very difficult for Guile. It's like they're both playing that zoning game, and one can play it better than the other. So maybe just the fact that JP trumps Guile so hard, at least seemingly so, is enough to shake Guile and to promote JP up there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a thing, because JP, as I mentioned earlier, is one of the characters who I would consider a potential top 5. While we're on the subject of just general top 5, I've already said Ken and Jury are in my top 3 for sure. We already touched now on Luke, Guile, and Cammy. The other characters that I have up there as potentials, because that's already 5 characters right there, are JP, DJ, who I use, and Chun-Li.
Chun-Li is interesting. I was especially afraid of Chun-Li during the beta. I think she's got a lot of the tools that she needs horizontally wise. It might just be that other characters do what she wants to do more effectively than her. I see her power, but I also hear so often that Chun-Li has like really bad matchups or really crappy situations that I haven't seen directly, but I keep hearing about this. And then you look at the results and like she's not the most popular character. We always hear about how technical and difficult to play she is. So it might be that if you want to win and you want an easier path to victory, but the same sort of style of play, that you might play Jury instead, because she's also putting the slow fireballs and controlling that horizontal space exceptionally well. But she's got just a straight DP where Chun-Li has to, juggle all these anti-airs and whatnot. So I really thought Chun-Li was high tier. I think she's very good, and I think people tend to underrate her, if anything, but I'm not so sold that she's a top 5er when you have the likes of, like you said, DJ's mobility and ability to play kind of from a lot of different ranges really effectively is really good to me. I haven't seen, again, I keep going back, I haven't seen the results. And when I say that, I mean, like, I haven't felt the pressure when I'm playing online against DJs, really, and I haven't felt like oh my gosh, this is a mountain of a character that I'm gonna have to figure out. I've had decent success, and I've been able to see where, you know, there are holes in the game, where the weaknesses technically are, where you can get hits and whatnot. But he is a very strong character. He's got the fastest drive rush. He can zip up on you from anywhere on the screen, but he also's got a really good zoning game. It's just that a lot of those moves he does commit him to non-DI, or to makes him susceptible to DI because he can't cancel out of them, or he's stuck in animations for a while. So there's that. But I think I would put him in the running for top 5 for me. I'm not seeing, like, so we got Jury, we've got Luke, we've got Ken. I agree with all those. I think DJ's up there
on both Chun-Li and DJ. That's the thing as well, is you mentioned they have all these different options and these different things that you need to juggle, and that's why you don't feel the pressure from them yet,
because I haven't figured it out yet.
Give it 3 months, and the DJ and Chun-Li players are going to have so much stuff that you're going to be like, oh my god, what is going on? Is my prediction.
Okay, that's
on those
fair.
2 characters. Yeah.
Clip that.
Yeah, clip that, and, you know, hold it against me in 3 months if I'm wrong. But I really think DJ and Chun-Li are going to shine a lot more given time. On Honda, oh man, I don't even know. Like, he's too good to call a scrub killer, right?
Although he is a scrub killer, and he can be played that way, but he does have solid components to him where you can just go out and butt slam all day and throw out headbutts, but you can also play patiently, and that's a legitimate approach for this character, where it, especially, I think it's because of the mechanics in the game, but that's something that Hondas have had to traditionally rely on, like the gimmicky side of things, and he doesn't have to, but he can in Street Fighter 6, and to me that's scary, at least to the point where we need to explore and just see, because maybe that unlocks this character in a way we've never seen him before.
Entirely possible, but I need to put like an asterisk next to my personal opinion on Honda, because as I said, I play DJ, and I feel like DJ kind of cheats that matchup, because I can bait the EX headbutt with a fake fireball. That's and there's no risk involved for me. Like, if he doesn't bite, okay, you know, nothing happened to me. So, like, if he bites, I get a huge punish. If he doesn't bite, okay, who cares?
What do you do if he's just throwing out headbutt and, like, say you do a fake one and he does the headbutt? Do you use a strike, or do you go for a drive impact, or do you try to perfect parry?
I would probably go for the parry in that situation.
Okay.
But for the most part, DJ can also, you know, space in regular fireballs, and it makes it very annoying for the Honda to know, like, okay, how do I want to approach this? And a lot of Hondas I played against actually kind of gave up on the headbutt game entirely, because it was so frustrating trying to figure out, you know, what do I even do here? And if you get him to give up on the headbutt, you know, I think that's a good matchup, no? Like, that's how it feels to me.
I mean, that's like getting rid of jump. That's like taking jump off the table. It's like, once you've got a character doing, or a person doing that, they're probably going to lose.
So it's like, early on, you know, Honda and DJ players can hit me up, disagree if they, or agree for that matter. But for me, it feels like DJ kind of doesn't have to deal with the stuff that everyone else is dealing with when it comes to Honda.
Tell me about Kimberly, because she's all over the place. She's obviously very oppressive right now. I think that she's still the kind of character that she's got some solid stuff, and especially when she hits you, and I lose to Kimberly's plenty, but I do think she's the type similar to JP, where it's easy to throw all your BS at the other person, and they're going to have to figure out over time where the holes are, where, you know, that, like for instance, I only recently realized that if she does her teleports, and she can do 2 different kinds of teleports, and also one of them is pink spray, which is similar to what her drive impact looks like, and when you're dealing with that mental stack, that's a real thing, you know. But if I see teleport, I realize I can just do crouching medium kick and or medium punch, and it beats both of them on reaction to what she's doing. So things like that, is that when you have a Kimberly that can freely do that versus a Kimberly that can't freely do that anymore, the more things you take off the table, the less the mental stack is. And I wonder if that's going to whittle down to where she doesn't have enough of it to be you know, the force that she is right now. Where's that going to leave her? I think mid-tier at worst, but I'm not sure that she's a top 5, but I know that there are people that would argue that she is.
Yeah, and I think Kimberly is a good character. I really don't see any argument for why not, because she has a lot of good tools. But in line with what you were talking about, we saw some matches at CEO that were absolutely incredible. One of them was Phenom versus Justin Wong, which was so slow, so methodical, so incredibly patient on both players. And even the best of Kimberly players, like someone like Shine, who's been doing amazing with her, and I love watching. How would someone like Shine, who's amazing at Kimberly, approach this type of opponent? And it just seems very difficult for me because I feel like Kimberly, like you were saying, you can kind of seal her options, and someone who is that patient and that good is gonna do that. And that's like, if you can be shut down by patient play, which I think Kimberly can, I can't see you in top 5.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm getting off the train too, is that she's got some crazy stuff and she's gonna beat people that aren't ready. But once people know and are ready and are playing patiently and aren't just overwhelmed by, is she gonna run up and slide or overhead and put me in that weird block shimmy situation? Like, she gets away with some stuff, but I don't think it's enough to take her into the top 5 solidly. So, okay, gun to your head. Let's try to come up with a list of our top 5 here. So, guns to your head. Don't freak out.
Okay, I can't do like an internal ranking, but if I had to at this stage of the game pick a top 5, Ken and Jury are already in there.
Ken and Jury,
we already established there. They're locked for me. I think Luke has to be in there.
I do too. I agree with these so far. This is also my top 5 thus far.
I do believe both Chun and JP have a good shot at being top 5, but I haven't seen. I feel like JP is still falling off a bit, and I haven't seen enough from Chun yet, although I believe if I were investing in stocks, I would invest in Chun. Let me put it that way.
Okay.
So both JP and Chun, I would actually count away from my top 5, which leaves me here with Cammy, Guile, and DJ for the last 2 slots.
Who gets kicked out? Cammy, Guile, DJ.
Okay. I think that Cammy is similar to Jury, but Jury has a few more tools under her belt. So I would probably have to put Cammy out just because I think Jury does similar things, but a little bit better. Whereas I think DJ and Guile have more unique approaches and are probably the best at what they specifically do.
So do you think they win more matchups than Cammy does, though?
I've seen them lose less matchups.
That's like a weird Chinese riddle that my brain can't even wrap around.
It's not that they necessarily win more matchups than Cammy, but I've seen Cammy struggle in matchups, whereas I haven't seen that as much with Guile and DJ.
But what about the JP Guile matchup? Apparently that's hell and knocks Knuckle into losers.
Okay. I've been playing Zangief as a sub. There's no matchup against JP that gets close to that, so Guile mates they don't at me, okay? Because like Zangief JP is an actually horrible matchup.
It feels like it from my point of view too, as the JP player. All right, so we're gonna say Cammy's number 6 and DJ and Guile are in the top 5.
I think that's where I'm at. Yeah.
If it were me, I might do that, or I might switch Cammy and Guile. And I'm gonna. I said gun to her head. I'm gonna give it to Cammy because I'm seeing more people play Cammy and have more fruit with her. So that, but we might be wrong. But yeah, there it is. So I'm gonna say. I guess no, I don't agree with you. I slightly disagree with you, but those are our top 5s. I'll put a little graphic on the screen for you. And I'd like to hear from the people watching, especially now that we've had CEO. It's not a solid, like now we know for sure, but it's a new point of data. Who do you think are the current top 5 characters in Street Fighter 6? We're getting ready for EVOs just about a month away. Oh, by the way, tournament guy, do we have any major tournaments between now and EVO?
Yeah, we have Brussels Challenge, which is one of the biggest European events that's going to be happening. Red Bull Kumite, of course, this upcoming weekend, which is happening in South Africa this year, I believe. There are definitely more, but like if we're talking super majors, no, it's EVO.
We're gonna have a few new data points on the chart though before we get to EVO, and that'll be the biggest one yet. And we're gonna see the most international competition, the highest we've seen as of thus far. Yeah, Nick, was there anything else that you want to talk about when it comes to the top 5 characters in Street Fighter 6 right now?
Not off the top of my head, but one thing I do want to mention is looking at a lot of footage, especially from lower played characters. I do think that this is a pretty healthily balanced game at the moment. I think a lot of the strength lies in the systems of the game rather than the characters themselves. So I really do think that at this point, every character feels viable to me. And by viable, I mean could win a major in the right hands. Except maybe Lily. I don't really believe
Poor
in
Lily.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Dream King.
But you do think Zangief could? I mean, there are some videos of Snake Eyes Zangief. I think there's a couple videos of Snake Eyes Zangief beasting on JPs. So it tells you the significance of that matchup.
I've been watching a lot of Snake Eyes. I'm watching a lot of Veggie, and watching both of these guys and like the tech they've found and the way they approach matchups. I think you need to be more patient than ever to play a character like Zangief in this game.
Yeah.
I definitely again, I sub him, but I definitely can't. Like I'm just doing dumb stuff and it's fun. But watching like actual players sit with Zangief, yeah, I think he has the potential to win a major.
There you go, Zangief in MajinTenshinhan's top 5 then is what I heard there.
Not quite.
Thank you so much, Nick, for both covering CEO and all the tournaments that you're about to cover and getting us all that juicy data for us to be able to talk about here. Guys, if you don't follow him already on Twitter, you can do so. We'll have the MajinTenshinhan's Twitter handle up here. Nick, thank you very much, and thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you on the next episode of Talking Block.
Play Grand Blue and Bets of 6.